Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 536th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have Tom Stanfill. He's the author of a new book, Unreceptive, A Better Way to Sell, Lead, and Influence. But the "un" is scratched out, and we get into that. Had a great conversation. Good dude. Had a lot of fun with this. The interesting approach, the angle he's taken, and he's done this for a long time. He's got his own sales training company. Smart guy, he's done this for decades. From the back of the book, he talks about, in sharp contrast to the traditional approach to selling, learn how shifting the focus from crafting the perfect message to creating receptivity to your message will not only help you convert the formerly unwinnable customer, but also transform the relationships that matter most. And I agree. So as we get into this, he's got some key differentiators. You know, I always say that small hinges swing big doors. And I made these coins as my business cards. New customers get them. And I modeled it after Jeffrey Gitomer. He's got similar coins when I saw him. And I've had these for probably almost 10 years. But on the coin, it talks about learn to open relationships instead of closing deals. The old school methods, the high pressure, the gimmicks, the alternative choice closes. I mean, those things in a professional selling environment, they just don't cut it. So I like Tom's approach. You're in for a treat with this. So be ready to take some notes. If you've got questions, if you want to see how to apply principles like this to your own business, you want to talk with me about how we can come in and do that, hit me up. Go to thesaleswhisper.com, hit the contact us, and we'll find a time to talk. I'm spending a day next week with a client. Look for the Power Days link to be up here. Probably by the time this episode goes live, because I'm recording this intro maybe a week or 10 days early. So that's going to be an option for you. I'm doing a Power Day in San Diego, the 8th, I think. I got to look at my calendar. Pretty sure it's the 8th. There's no reason to drag out your success. These small hinges can happen in a day. They can happen in a quick session. When you get that aha moment and you're convinced to move forward confidently, nothing's going to stop you. And most of the time, we just have too much noise. And I've been doing my own pondering. What do I do? What do I really do? And who do I do it for? And I help entrepreneurs, professional salespeople, sales managers, executives cut through the clutter. Make the most direct line from the salesperson to the sale. Even using technology, going back to 2008 when I got started with Infusionsoft, which is now Keep. I was literally the only salesperson doing this stuff for years. And they were all technicians, technologists that got involved, and they would build some fancy stuff. But did it help make the sale? Of course, in some cases it did. Sometimes you need it super complex. But a lot of times, those clients would come to me later and say, I can't do anything with this. Can you break this beast apart, make it manageable, bite-sized chunks, and just help us sell? So even from the beginning, it's just been it's what I do, right? Tighten things up, cut through the clutter, get to the rubber meets the road, the brass tacks, blah blah blah, whatever you want to call it, and I do it fast. And I used to struggle with, how to price what I do. And the reality is, you're your own worst customer. Because it was easy for me, I'd be willing to do it for less. But the reality is, what's the value? If we can bang something out for $10,000 in a day, others would take $5,000 and 3 months to do the same thing. Are you ahead? Even if they charge less, let's say they charge $5,000, but took them 3 months. It's ridiculous, because what are the opportunity costs? I help you see the light and make that pivot, make that switch, make that big, bold move, raise your prices, and you do it in a day instead of 90 days. How much money are you leaving on the table? So dig deep, invest in yourself. Let me help you move that needle fast. All right. So listen to this episode, and if you want to talk, pause it, go to thesaleswhisperer.com, hit the contact us, and we will do it. Now let's bring on Tom. Tom Stanfill, author of Unreceptive, or is it Receptive? I don't know. It's kind of scratched out. It's a mystery that will be unveiled.
It's the problem and the solution.
Man, we're deep and we're not 10 seconds into this thing. So receptive, a better way to sell, lead, and influence, all the way from Georgia. Welcome to the Sales Podcast.
Great, Wes. Thanks for having me on. I was excited to be on your show.
Listen, I've been to Georgia a time or two, but I don't remember. Mm-hmm. Do y'all have gumbo in Georgia?
You do if you go to the right restaurant.
All right, but it's not like normal. You just have like peach cobbler, right?
Yeah, we have peach cobbler. What are we famous? Fried moonshine. Chicken. We got good moonshine, good fried chicken. Grits. We're really good at grits. Barbecue.
Right. I'm done.
We got some good barbecue.
I'm done. You had me at grits.
I can put it on thick if you need me to. We can get down here in the South. Come on down.
When I go to the South, the first Waffle House I find, we stop.
Oh, Waffle House.
We stop. Yeah. Yeah. And I tell them, bring me the biggest bowl of grits you've ever served in your entire life. You can bring the pot out if you'd like. Just charge me by the pound. And I eat grits and sausage till I'm puking. I know. And I eat some more.
In high school, we were trying to eat like 1,000 calories an hour. We would, we would stop one there. I don't know. There's one at every exit. We'd stop at every one of them.
So I was always an eater. My mom would literally mark on the calendar the days I'd say I'm full at dinner. She would literally get up and circle on the calendar. I told my dad once, I said, I wish they just invent a pill you could just swallow and not be hungry. I told him, I was like a teenager, said, it's not that I'm full. I'm just tired of chewing.
Oh, well, I had 4 teenagers at one point, and those people can eat, and they would come over to the house. They still come over to the house. They go right to the pantry.
Oh, yeah.
They're 30 years old. They come over to the house. They go right to the pantry.
I think it was my summer between like 6th and 7th grade. I grew something ridiculous, like at least 4 inches. It might have been like 6 inches.
Yeah.
You
were hungry.
I was a senior in high school, and my center was a junior. And he went on to play center at USC.
Wow.
To give you an idea how big he was.
Wow.
And our
University of South Carolina or University of Southern California?
Southern California.
Okay.
Back in the 80s, right? Or he went there, and he went there in 89. I went to the Air Force and played linebacker in 88.
Wow.
So I was a big boy, but he was really big. And there's this place called Dirty's in Houston, and they make the best chicken fried steak.
Ooh,
and they serve
I love chicken fried.
They serve it on this oval plate, right? So it's almost like a platter. Like so, if you order the full one, it's just spilling over.
White gravy,
and French fries.
Yeah.
So
you got to go mashed potatoes. Got to go mashed potatoes.
You know what? It's been a long time. It might have been mashed potato. I feel like it's French fries. I don't know. Could have been.
No, I'm just saying as a principle. It should
be.
I
hear you.
I'm not arguing with your order. I'm just saying as a principle. That's a principle.
Right. I think they. Now you got me thinking, though. I don't know. They served it with one or the other, but I ate all of mine and half of David's. He couldn't finish it.
Wow.
So I've been hungry for food.
And you're hungry.
And for great knowledge my whole life, man.
There's your transition. I've been hungry for food and great knowledge.
Oh, man.
Well, I hope I can share some of that.
So you've been doing this since the 90s, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, we started a sales training company in 96. So it's been almost 27 years.
Man.
Yeah. It's been a great ride. Love what I do. Kind of fell into it, but yeah.
And now you meet the sales whisperer and your life is complete. You can retire.
I can retire. That's been my goal. I wrote a book to meet the sales whisperer.
Hey, I understand. You're not alone. You're not the first. Okay.
It was my best opportunity. I said, how do I meet the sales whisperer? How do I meet Wes? They said, you got to write a book and then you can get on his podcast. So 10 years ago, I set out on my journey.
And for anyone listening, if you mail me bourbon, you mail me grits, I'll have you on the show. I mean, I'm easy. Okay? Let's not make this thing too difficult.
I love that. Oh, I love it.
Oh man. So I love even just the introduction. You just get after it. And it's and this is why you're successful, because you figured this out a long time ago, is that logic doesn't sell, does it?
Nope. People make emotional decisions. I say this in the book. People make emotional decisions and support them with intellectual alibis. That even the most financially sound person or most logically based person that you can think of still makes an emotional decision. It's how they feel when they make that logical decision. It's how they feel when they feel secure about the money that they're saving or making. It's all about a feeling. And what we're finding a lot now is most customers and prospects are emotionally, that's a key word, emotionally closed to working with sales reps. And so everything we've been taught sabotages our ability to convert the unreceptive customer or prospect. So reps keep doing the same thing, and it's working on a smaller and smaller number of customers.
So what's a poor boy to do? I got kids to feed. I got ibuprofen to buy from my jiu-jitsu aches and pains, man. I got to make a sale.
You got to make a sale. Well, and that's that desire to do that, Wes, is why we amp up the argument. And so, we talk about the traditional approach doesn't work to the Receptive, and the traditional approach is the idea of going to court. Right. I'm going to have the most logical, salient, and powerful argument, and the best argument will win. I used to think that when I first got married. Right. I'm going to walk into court, I'm going to present my position. And if it's the best argument and I have the best facts and the best rationale, then the judge will rule. And then everybody will go, okay, well, Tom, you're right. Now, by the way, if my wife presents the best argument, then she wins. That is not how it works. No one's in the courtroom. There is no judge. There's no jury. It's the people are either open to what you have to say or they're closed. And a lot of times when the approach that we take closes them down. And I think the best way to solve the problem, which is really your question, is to think of it like a farmer. Like for a farmer to grow a vibrant crop, there's the soil, the quality of the soil, and then there's the quality of the seed. There's the fertility of the soil, and there's the quality of the seed. It's real simple. Where does the farmer start? Farmer starts on the soil, right? They create a fertile soil before they plant the seed. In sales, we're just one-dimensional. We think of our seed, our value prop, our message. And so the way to create receptivity is to shift from your message to creating receptivity. How do I get them to accept the invitation of a conversation, to listen to my point of view? And so there's a lot of groundwork that needs to happen before you ever deliver your message. And sellers just are one-dimensional, most of them.
Look, the sellers aren't, okay? It's my boss. That dude is a jerk, man. He is squeezing me. Okay, look, I blew out my numbers last year, and what do? They raised my quota 30% on top of the 50%.
They do that, yeah.
I got this unicorn, man. It's not going to happen every time. It's not my fault, Tom. It's not my fault.
It's not my fault. Yeah, well, I can't speak to what's fair in your world if you're a seller. But what I can speak to is the best way to hit your number and sell the most that you possibly can. And so the easiest way to do that is to increase your territory, right? So right now, most sellers are getting shut down by at least 80 to 90% of the customers. And so they're only successful with this small number. So they got to keep looking for new opportunities, and they got to keep sending messages, and they got to send more email. And so I'm all about making it easier for sellers to convert this large population of customers who aren't open to talking to a sales rep. And here's the thing, they're not rejecting a solution, they're rejecting a sales call. And the statistics out now about the number of sellers who want to engage a rep when evaluating a solution is plummeting. And McKinsey just published a study that's the number of customers that want to talk to a sales rep when evaluating has dropped 120% in the last 3 years. That's crazy. I mean, they would rather talk to a bot, do a Google search, stay in their own or network, to figure it out with it than engaging in sellers. So they've got to find a new way to create receptivity. And that's what this book is about, and it's pretty simple, honestly. It just requires something different. It's not easy to do, but it's easy to understand. And the reason it's not easy to do, because a lot of the things that they need to learn to do are counterintuitive.
So you're saying I should stop begging?
You don't beg. That's right.
It is work. I've closed sales that way.
Yeah, please. It might work a little bit, right? You might get a little bit.
They weren't at top margin. Okay.
Yeah, please. Well, that's one of the things that people miss is that, and this is a real simple thing, is that before a call, before an email, before a meeting, we typically are the hero of the story. The gravitational pull to self is so strong that, begging is about us. And I know you're joking, but we're trying to figure out how to get them to buy versus trying to figure out why is it in their best interest to take this meeting or invest in this solution or move to the next step. And we don't really know what's on their whiteboard. So we have to lead with our solution versus lead with what's important to them. So there's a lot of simple things we can do to get people open.
Grits, bourbon.
You can send them grits, but now that if you can do that, but here's the thing, they got to like grits and they got to like bourbon.
Okay.
And just because you like grits and bourbon doesn't mean they like grits and bourbon.
All right. So you put them in a rear naked choke, get them like 10% away from passing out. If they pass out, they can't sign, but you got to.
Right.
You got to find out
exactly what I'm saying, Wes. That's exactly you got to
figure out their
you've
dominant
got the heartbeat
hand.
of the book. You got the heartbeat of the book, baby.
So you got to wrist lock the non-dominant hand so they can still sign, right? I mean that works.
Yeah, threat. I think threat's good. That's chapter 14.
But they're not at the office anymore. They're all at home. Then it's kind of creepy.
That's
hacking them in their home. I mean,
exactly.
So what am I supposed to do, man? Give me one nugget. Come on. There's not enough pictures in here. Too slow. I got kids to feed. Christmas is coming up. Give me a nugget. See, begging works. Begging works. You're about to give me a nugget.
Give you a nugget. Okay. Well, one of the ones I just talked about, the simplest way to get somebody's attention, whether you're trying to get a meeting, like you're sending an email, making a call, whatever, walking through the offices, which I know is kind of rare right now, or grabbing someone's attention when you're starting a presentation and drawing them to a point. If you can't start the sentence with because you won't get their attention. So another way to say that is, if you want to get somebody's attention, lead with what's on their whiteboard. In other words, you got to think about right now, whoever you're trying to talk to, whether you're trying to convince them of something or you're trying to get a meeting, you picture their whiteboard. And if what you're about to say isn't on that whiteboard, you won't get their attention. And so another way to say that is, if I show you a picture that you're in, you will look at it 100% of the time. And so what sellers tend to do is show a picture of themselves and no one cares. When someone asks you to look at when someone asks you to look at their photo album on their phone about a trip they went in, you're like, okay, that's interesting. But if they show you a picture of you, you're really interested. So that's a simple tip to draw people to a point, to a slide, to transition, to a meeting, is lead with what's on their whiteboard, which a lot of times people ask the question is, well, how do I know that?
So Tom, well, how do I know that?
How do I know that? Well, if you either can do some little research, right? If it's a super qualified opportunity, you can do some research and talk to people who might know what's on their whiteboard. But the simplest way is to study the people you're meeting with. Everyone in a certain role, like the people I call on, VPs of trainings, VP of sales enablement, VPs of sales, their whiteboard and the top 3 or 4 things that they struggle with or want are the same. It all falls in those categories. So the more that I study them and understand that, the easier it is for me to guess what might be on their whiteboard. And if it's not, if you miss, then you start with something else. You change it up. But either way, that formula works. And the next thing that you should communicate is a disruptive truth, like something they don't know about a better way to solve a problem. that they have, whether it's a statistic, a principle, a best practice, but it's something that you're telling them that they can, a new way to think about it. Because that, another reason that decision makers don't meet with sales reps is because they have nothing to say. They have nothing to offer. They have no expertise. And so when you communicate that you understand what's on their whiteboard, that gets their attention. But it keeps their attention when you communicate a disruptive truth and communicate that you know something about a better way to solve their problem. And now they're like, okay, this is different. Because if you look at what you get, I mean, because I get, in my role, I get hundreds of emails a month, and they all say the same thing. Now, some people are pretty good at saying something that's on my whiteboard, and that gets my attention, but they fail to then communicate something new about how to solve my problem. And then what do they do that's unique? So that's one little tip that I'll throw out that's in the book. And by the way, we've studied that approach, and it outperformed the best marketing messages by 366%. So it works.
Well, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Well, it's the old adage. I think it was Ogilvy, so we must enter the conversation going on in the mind of the prospect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a quote that we always say, I love to say from Ogilvy. It says, if you sell fire alarms, start with a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people don't. I remember I got in trouble years ago, 2008. I was working with a startup, and I took Perry Marshall's white paper course, and I was creating my own white papers.
Yeah.
And man, marketing department, my boss, I mean, they lost their minds. That's not your job. It's marketing's job. I'm like, even then I knew, like, marketing, the messaging sucks.
Yeah, right. A lot of times it does.
Because
they're product centric, they're solution centric.
I always tell people, I somebody just the other day was asking me, like, did you get your name from the Dog Whisperer? Yeah. September 1st, 2006. I was watching the Dog Whisperer on Nat Geo. I think it was still National Geographic by then. They weren't even that hip.
Yeah.
And I had my laptop on my lap doing a little bit of work. And I saw Cesar Millan, and he said, I rehabilitate dogs and I train their manager, their owners. I'm like, I rehabilitate salespeople, and train their managers. Because I've always said most salespeople haven't had sales training.
Yeah, they've
had product training. The ops department, the marketing department comes in, and they say, hey, look, this pen, it's made out of bamboo and recycled aluminum, and go sell it. So like that company that I was working at back in 2008, they started by a Wall Street CIO, lots of funding. We go in there for a week of training, may have been 2 weeks of training. I don't know. It was brutal. But at the very end, he comes in to talk with all the new sales reps.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, any questions? I said, yeah, I got a question. If you're I said, our prospects are you, right? At least in your previous roles. Yeah, right. Absolutely. I'm like, okay. So let's backtrack a little bit. What would I have had to do back then to get you on the phone to listen to me? And the guy couldn't answer the question.
Wow.
I'm like, we just spent a week. You spent a lot of money training this whole room full of people, and they were paying us fat salaries and fat commissions. Or they were paying us commissions early because they were gobbling. This was 2008, right? Things had just started, hadn't quite peaked, and we all got laid off by the end of the year,
right?
Because the financial collapse, right? He couldn't answer that question. But I knew all the speeds and feeds and the gigabits and the terabits and blah blah blah.
Wouldn't have got his attention.
He didn't know how for us to set an appointment. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we just talked about. Yeah, it's really the simplest way to think about it is if you want to set an appointment, you lead with the problem they have. There's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system, and I shorten it to say Razz. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, Wes. You probably have.
Yep.
And the Razz filters through thousands of messages we get every day. I mean, some people say we get as many as 10,000 messages a day. So your brain has to automatically, without consulting you, subconsciously just filter through all those messages, and you ignore them. Like when you drive, you don't notice anything, and then all of a sudden you will notice something. Like if you're in the market for a new car, all of a sudden when you're driving to work, you'll notice cars that fit the description, and you don't consciously notice cars, but you see them, and it all happens subconsciously. Well, the number one criteria the Razz uses to move something from your subconscious to your conscious is something that you need. And so if you want to get somebody's attention, you start with what they know they need. So prospecting is about alignment. It's not about selling. It's not about influencing. It's about saying what they're already thinking. I have a fire. We have alarms. You start with a fire. If you're in IT, don't talk about your solution. If you're in software, don't talk about your solution. Talk about what's on their whiteboard. What problem are they trying to solve? And then that gets them to look at the picture. And then you can communicate something unique that you do. And again, if you can wrap in a disruptive truth there, then you separated yourself. So it takes a little time to develop it, but once you do, you can repeat it, because there's only 3 or 4 problems you probably want to focus on. And obviously they're going to be relevant to your solution. So that's one of the barriers we talk about in the book is getting access, getting a meeting, opening a closed door, which is tough. Because if we can get more doors, once we're in, usually it's much easier for us to build receptivity.
Can I align with the executive assistant, with the receptionist, to even get to the person to have this meeting?
One of the best places to find out what's on the decision maker's whiteboard is by navigating through the organization and talking to people who know the person. And one of the quick tips I'd share is if you do talk to the receptionist or the assistant, which I don't know how common that is anymore, you're seeing less and less of that, but the key is to treat them just like the decision maker. You don't try to go around them. Help them do their job. If a screen is playing the role of a screen, their job is to keep bugs out. So don't be a bug. So, help them evaluate whether it's in the decision maker's best interest or her best interest to get you in front of the decision maker. Help him get you in front of the decision maker. So be bold. Say, look, this is what we do. I don't know if it's a potential fit for us to work together. I'd love to talk with you about the organization and what they need, and you can help determine if it makes sense for us to get into to work with the organization or move to the next step. So you and I, let's talk. And I can't tell you the number of times I've been with reps out in the field who will walk into a building and just ignore the person who works 10 feet from the decision maker. So yeah, it's a basic thing, but you certainly, because some people still do that. I mean, and I know COVID shut that down, but a lot of people still walk in buildings, and more power to them.
Yeah. I had an office for a little over a year.
Mm-hmm.
In all my time being on my own, and I had an assistant, and oh my goodness, if you pissed her off, you are not getting to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I've always told our assistant receptionist, if they're in that role, executive assistant, I said, when we're interviewing people, I always go back, I said, how did they treat you? Because one of the ways, here's another little nugget of wisdom I'll share to the younger folks. That sounds like I'm from Georgia too. Doesn't say what I'm younger for. If you want to assess somebody's character, watch how they treat people who can do nothing for them.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, because I've been married 37 years. I've had girls ask me, young girls, like, well, what's the secret to being married and picking the right person? I say, watch how they treat people who can do nothing for them. That's when you know their character. And so, that's exactly right. You should talk to other people about that. So don't be that person, or at least learn to fake it.
Yeah. See if I can pull it up real quick. But there was some kind of reality show, and Sir Richard Branson picked up these kids, young adults, and he was in character. So makeup and everything, kind of walked.
Meaning he wasn't Richard Branson.
Right. He was in kind of stooped over, but he's driving.
Is that the Boss show about the boss?
It might have been if he went under, but it wasn't one of those undercover boss, because it was years and years ago. I'll have to find it. But he was dressed up as this really elderly, really frail man, but he's still a chauffeur, right?
Oh, he
And
was a chauffeur.
he was a chauffeur picking these kids up from the airport, right? And one of the kids, there were a couple of women and one man, and they had like a huge suitcase, right? And he was really struggling to get it, and that dude just walked away and like let him struggle with it. And then they get into the hotel, right? And then he comes out of his disguise and shows the video, and he's like, before the thing even started, he was kicked out of the reality show. He's like, you failed the first test. He's like, you didn't treat someone that couldn't help you.
I love that.
You didn't treat them well.
Mm-hmm.
And like, holy smokes, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I love that. I love that example.
Yeah, so good. And I guess some of this is just good upbringing, right? I've made more money from operation, office managers and receptionists because I didn't ignore them.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to I think people miss that when they're actually dealing with the decision maker and they're on their best behavior. I mean, ultimately, people are attracted to you by how you make them feel. And so simple things like how you acknowledge and validate someone's point of view. Most people, when they're communicating, someone will say something, they will hear what they say, but they're thinking of, I'm going to counter that argument because I want to say this in response to that, right? So again, it's an exchange. They think it's an exchange of information. It's not. What it is somebody just said something, and then the way that you responded communicated that you don't care about that person and you're rejecting that person's point of view and you're not validating them. And so now they don't want to listen to what you say because they still feel like you haven't heard them. And so these are little nuances, but when you watch somebody that knows how to communicate well and validate and listen and you communicate that they care and respect what people say, people light up. It's our greatest emotional need. And so, I mean, it's not difficult to understand, but it's difficult to make it a habit because it is because we are so typically focused on ourselves and what we're trying to do. It takes work to rewire that. I mean, even I teach all this stuff and I wrote about it. Before every meeting, I have to make a decision. Who's the hero of the story? Who's first? Because if I don't stop and make that decision, I will focus on myself. The gravitational pull is going to pull me to myself. So these are little things that make a big difference. And we've unpacked them. And there's other much more tactical things in the book about, how do we lead a discovery meeting and how do we position our solution and how do you respond to objections and how do you negotiate? There's a lot of that tactical stuff, but there's a core foundation to all of it that has to be in place or you're going to fail.
So is this primarily like for B2B, can it work, a guy going door to door selling solar,
Yeah, it can be a transactional B2C type. Not all the things in the book would, be relevant to someone who's in a 5-minute call and selling something very, very, inexpensive, but most of it is. Probably the one thing is the model we teach for communicating a message. Some of that may be a little too complex for, a $500 product or service, right? May not need to communicate a disruptive truth, but I will say, if you can do it, it will all be more successful. And I say that in the book. Here's there's a model for framing up how you position your solution. You don't have to use all three, but the more unreceptive they are, the more important it is to use all three. So I tried to make it relevant to anyone who wants to influence or has a desire. And we all have to influence. I mean, tell you where I really learned this is at home. Raising 4 teenagers, being married. I mean, I had a harder time applying some of the things that I teach in the book at home than I did at work. So, but I've also would say when I've applied it at home, it's revolutionized my relationships. I mean, I would give anything to go back to my 20s and teach my 20-year-old Tom early marriage, the principles in this book. because we're never happier than our relationships. You know, I mean, it's so this really is a book on relationships.
Yeah. Well, you should have called me, because I mean,
I should have, but I had to book to meet you. I couldn't get on the show.
I know, but I mean, 26 years of marriage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've always worn the pants. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All
my
right.
my wife just picks the colors. Okay. But
you always wear the pants, but she picks the colors. Okay. That's good. That's good.
Come on, man.
Yes. Yes. I got you. I love it.
I get the last word in every argument too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
That just becomes the first words of the next argument. Or it's yes, ma'am.
Or yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yes, honey.
Yes. All right. Yes, dear.
All right, we're going there.
That's great. So you've been married 27 years?
26.
26. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm on my 39th.
Man.
39th year.
Very nice. All right. So this is good stuff. So is it unreceptive or is it receptive?
Yeah, the actual title of the book is Unreceptive. The cover shows a line through the un. So we like the idea of kind of having the problem and the solution in the title.
Yeah.
Thought it also might catch some eyes, but Unreceptive is the name of the book. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. I'd love for you guys to buy it. You can, if you want to learn more about the book before you buy it, there's a website called unreceptivebook.com, and there's some videos there. But I'd love for you to buy the book and give us a review on Amazon if you find it helpful.
And listen, if they still have questions, go jump in a cold lake. Okay. I mean, come on, people. Come on.
Are you reaching out to me on link?
What the hell's wrong with you?
What's wrong? Yeah. Here's a plug here's a last, for our podcast. I interviewed a guy named Tyler Berkman. I didn't put him on the book. I think he's on the website. I think I met him too late, but he's been through our training programs because that's what Aslan does. I'm CEO of a company called Aslan Training, and we provide sales training. And he's went through our program starting in 2015. I just happened to talk to him for another reason. And I said, so how you doing? He said, well, I'm actually the number one seller. I said, really? He goes, yeah, I've outsold the nearest sales rep by 2 times. So he sold 2 times more than the nearest sales rep. And I said, well, what about getting appointments? He said, well, I've sold 25% more appointments than all the other sales reps. And I said, well, that's amazing. What would you say the reason you're so successful? He goes, because the other sellers don't understand receptivity. And I'm like, I love you, Tyler. And so anyway, I think that's the best story. I mean, I'll close with that story. It really does work. And honestly, it's worked for me. I mean, I still sell. I sell our solution. And I love the idea of walking into a room, and I'm not there to manipulate anybody. I'm there to try to serve them, try to help them solve their problem. And the better I get at that, the more I win. Or, as we talked about in our pre-show prep, you get a fast no. If I can't help you solve your problem, I don't want to spend time talking to you about your problem that I can't solve, and I'm free to go work to the next person. If I'm an orthopedic surgeon and you have heart problems, let's not meet and touch base and write proposals.
Yeah. No
and
kidding.
So being other-centered and focusing on serving customers and learning some of the principles and tactics in this book you'll be more efficient and more successful.
Yeah.
And you'll enjoy your role.
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay to have fun.
Yeah. You're going to have a blast.
And I mean, I said it jokingly, right? But at the core, it's true. Like go jump in a lake. It's like, if you're so untrusting after this to spend 15 or 20 or 25 bucks, I mean, but it's speaking to you, right? You've listened to this whole thing and you can tell this is a sincere conversation with good tips from experienced people. You got to question yourself. Why are you so untrusting, right? Why are you so methodical and have to dig in and read the manual? If you're like that, then you're conveying that to your prospects and you're accepting that from them. Right. Oh, I need to read the manual. You think so? Well, that's very rational. And do more research. That's what I would do. And you accept these stalls and put offs instead of asking for the hard question. Give me an answer, dude. So And that's why you always say salespeople are usually easy marks, right? I like buying. You don't really have to sell very hard to me, but I do enjoy a good sales process.
I think I have a hard time with sellers who I could tell her don't really care about.
Oh yeah,
they don't care about what I need. It's just like like I've just memorized this script and I'm delivering my script, rinse and repeat. I'm like that.
I ignore 19 out of 20 pitches, LinkedIn, whatever, but based on
when they're
timing,
good, when you can tell they're good, I love them. And I love when they're really working at trying it. Like I had a lady try to sell me on renovating my house, and we said, and we were really interested, and she did a great job. Matter of fact, I wrote an article about her because it was such a great example of an emotional, how people make emotional decisions. They're not making they're not buying a thing, they're buying an emotion.
Yeah.
And so she comes to my house, and I was willing to spend like X to renovate my house because I'm thinking about putting it on the market. And she was 6X. I mean, it was, but the way she sold it, it was like all the problems were going to disappear. And I felt this peace that she's going to just solve everything, and she's guaranteed, and I'll never have to do another thing. And I'll walk in one day and my house will be completely renovated, and I won't have to manage it, and it's not going to be any problems. She's going to guarantee it, and it's just all going to be done. Poof. And I'm like in. But then we decided, well, actually, we're going to put it on the market, and we're going to see what happens without renovating the house. And you could just see her wheels turning. And so what she decided to do was to try to talk me out of selling my house. And she's went down that route of I'm loving you, because I mean, she's like, well, maybe you don't need to sell it. Do you really need to sell your house? And I'm like, that's beautiful. And she did it in a very other-centered way. She's just like, let's explore that. I'm like, that's exactly what you should do, because maybe, am I really going to sell my house? Then if I don't, I need this. And so anyway, a long story to say, I love when people are good at what they do and are thinking of it in the right way.
So if you keep your house, will you use her?
Yes. If great question. If I stay and I'm going to renovate, I'd write her a check and say, do it.
Would you do it for the 6X or for what you originally thought?
No, 6X. She's 6X.
Oh, okay. I remember I was in high school.
And it may not be 6X. Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah.
Maybe 5X, but
regardless, it's more than you had in mind.
It's way more than I had in mind.
And it was an easy transition for her to get you way up.
She figured out what was really going on, what I really wanted. I was going to I'm going to be the general contractor, and I have to hire the painter, and I got to hire the person who does the renovation on the house, fixes the windows. And then I got to hire a person to fix the stucco. And I had to do all that. And it was all on my plate. And she's like, I'm going to take care of all of it. And it's guaranteed. And I'm like, love you, take it, go.
She saw on your whiteboard, speaking of whiteboards, she saw this interview was coming up, and she knew when it goes live, like, you'll probably sell 10 trillion books.
10 trillion. Absolutely.
They're gonna have to all be digital. There's not enough trees in the world to print these books. They're going to melt servers. Okay. So she knew 6X was nothing.
She knew. She's brilliant. She's brilliant.
Man, I remember I was in high school and my dad, I needed dress shoes, and I'm just a teenage kid. And again, like still growing like a weed. And I mean, I'm not going to keep, I've got clothes that are 20 years old now. Now I buy nice stuff. I'm going to keep them for a long time.
Right.
But when you're 14, you're
not going to wear them 6 months.
You don't get your kids nice stuff. My dad's like, I wanted to see that shoe. Right. And this guy like ignores us and brings out like a 6X shoe.
Yeah.
And my dad, he wasn't outwardly mad, but I could tell he was basically just
agitated.
He's like, that's not what I asked for. I think he still had the guy bring the other shoe, and I don't think we bought from him. I think he just went to another store out of spite. He's like, that guy. So I still remember that lesson. It's like the dude he pushed too far. Right? He didn't know the audience. Oh, you're buying for a 14-year-old kid that's growing like a weed. Yeah, you don't need, in 1984. Yeah, you don't need a $300 shoe in 1984 for a teenager.
Exactly right.
But anyway, all right. Well, we talked too long. Tell us the name of your book again. Where do we?
Unreceptive by Tom Stanfill, and you can get it wherever books are sold, Amazon. They're also available retail stores. I bought my first book the other night at Barnes and Noble. That was fun.
Shazam.
Shazam.
But you want them to go to your website, right? You got a website for the book.
Yeah, unreceptivebook.com if you want to go to the website and check out more, or you can go to Aslan Training, ASLAN training.com if you want to learn more about our company and the services that we provide.
Cool. I'm linking to both of those here.
Thank you, my friend.
All
Thanks,
right.
Wes.
Go get some peach barbecue. You've earned it.
Hey, country fried steak.
Now I'm hungry. All right, man. Have a great day. Our hunger and desire to make a sale works against us. Amen. I've always said, if you're desperate, you can't give it away. My dad always says, if you think you're desperate, you are. So stop being desperate. Stop begging for sales. I love that line. They're not rejecting your solution. They're rejecting your sales call. All right, so how do you get them to listen? How do we enter the conversation going on in the mind of the prospect? That's where the magic happens. Okay? What are you doing to engage them? What are you doing to make them the hero? What are you doing to simplify this, to make it repeatable, to make it transferable to others in your company? That's the magic. That's what you got to figure out, right? So, communicate a disruptive truth, like a better way to solve a problem they have. Something that's always worked for me, I've learned many years ago, still works, is talking about the success you've had with their competitor. That's why you put testimonials up, put real testimonials up. Because, when you have proof, it makes your promise very easy to believe. So do you have overwhelming proof? Right? So you can underpromise and overdeliver. If you've got the proof, show it, flaunt it. Get the testimonials, get the documentation, get the case studies. That's where the magic happens. All right? We talked about, towards the end, hearing no early is a win. Stop keeping these dead deals on life support. Trim the fat. This is coming out here in December. It's a good time. Just take a hard, honest look. Cull the weak ones. Start 2022 with a fresh set of eyes and get after it. Okay? And yes, it's a little scary. It's a little frightening to look at a pipeline that's thin. But that's fine. At least you know what you've got to do. Lying to yourself is not helping you. It's not helping anyone. So figure it out. Figure out where you really are. Figure out what the shortcomings are. Then figure out the daily activity you have to take to hit those numbers. If you go to my website, there's a free sales calculator. Look in the navigation and go use that as a starting point. Plug in your numbers. Figure out what it is you've got to do to make your number. Okay? Hiding from numbers. Hiding from uncomfortable truths. Hiding from, avoiding tough conversations will never get you anywhere in life. Ask better questions. Raise your expectations of everyone around you, including yourself, and things will be fine. All right? It's easier if you've got a peer group. It's easier if you've got a mentor. It's easier if you've got some type of coach inspiring you, kicking your ass, holding you accountable. If you need that kind of help, again, hit me up. Look through the site. MakeEverySale.com is the on-demand content. There's also the group. I'm renaming some of these things, tightening things up, but you can find it. Come join us. There's even a private coaching option with the small group coaching. If you can't find it, hit the contact us. I'm the one that answers it. All right? We'll be in touch, and I'll help you. I'll go sell something.